it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. The mountain had always been there first. Long before the highway crews had cut into it, long before the surveyors drove their stakes into frozen earth and declared that steel and asphalt would conquer the continental divide. The Rockies had stood at over 11,000 feet, indifferent to man's advances. 60 miles west of Denver, along the stretch of I-70 that threaded between Silverthorne and Idaho Springs, man had carved a wound straight through that stone. They called it the Eisenhower-Johnson Memorial Tunnel, a name heavy with honor, a name meant to make it sound permanent. It ran 1.7 miles beneath the continental divide. At its highest point, the west pole sat at 11,158 feet above sea level, the east at 11,013. The highest vehicular tunnel in the world, the proud apex of the interstate highway system. Two separate throats punched through the mountain. Engineers believed they'd mastered it. They believed that if something went wrong inside that 1.7-mile stretch of reinforced rock and steel, they would know. They would contain it. But they didn't account for what could move through people. When the infection began, it did not look like the end of the world. It looked like congestion. Brake lights stacking up along I-70. A jackknife semi, a fender bender at 11,000 feet. Traffic slowing to a crawl inside a tunnel that had always felt too narrow, too enclosed. Then the radios went quiet, and then the screaming started. And inside, thousands of vehicles idled beneath hundreds of feet of granite. Families heading home, truckers hauling freight, skiers chasing snow, all of them sealed inside the highest tunnel on Earth, beneath a mountain that had already proven it did not yield easily. 2 tunnels, almost 2 miles of darkness, 11,000 feet above sea level, one long, narrow grave carved straight through the heart of the Rockies. Zombie Outbreak, Colorado, by Augustus Cordova. Part 1. Oh, God damn it, I should have gone the long way. That was a line stuck on repeat in my skull while I sat there, truck rumbling beneath me, staring at a river of brake lights bleeding red into the throat of the Eisenhower Tunnel. Mid-October, just another typical Tuesday, just another choke point on the I-70 carving through the Rockies. My fingers locked around the wheel of my F-150, gripped tight enough to ache, while the radio muttered about an incident somewhere in Denver. No details, just that polished, empty phrasing, the kind they use when they're hiding the real story. God, I'd been rolling since 6 that morning, wrapping up a job in Vail, pouring concrete for some millionaire's mountain escape. We'd finished the foundation, packed up, and all I wanted to do was to crawl back to my place in Aurora, crack a beer, and disappear for a few hours. The tunnel was supposed to be quick, less than 2 miles straight through rock, 3 minutes on a normal day. I'd already wasted 20 sitting still. The guy behind me leaned on his horn, long ugly blasts bouncing off the concrete like pressure waves, like any of us could move even if we wanted to. I shut the engine off to save fuel and dropped the window. The air inside hit my tongue like old coins, stale metallic, soaked with exhaust that just pooled beneath the fluorescent strips overhead. People's voices drifted between the rows of cars, doors opening, folks stretching, chatting across lanes, putting on that thin mask of calm people wear when they're scared but won't admit it. But something was off. I felt it low in my gut, that subsonic buzz of trouble. The same instinct you get on a job site right before steel buckles or somebody makes a mistake that costs them fingers. 15 years in construction had taught me to trust that signal. It kept me breathing this long. My phone vibrated. Text from my sister. "You okay? Where are you?" I tapped back. "Stuck in tunnel. Why?" 3 dots blinked, then vanished. Came back, then nothing. The radio dissolved into static, snapped alive again with a different voice and that sterile emergency tone. Reports of violent incidents across the Denver metropolitan area. Authorities requesting residents remain indoors. Avoid hospitals and emergency rooms unless absolutely necessary. Updates forthcoming. Violent incidents, plural. Across the whole state, maybe wider. I twisted the dial, chasing clarity, landed on a local station halfway through a sentence. and don't know what's causing it. Calls coming in from Aurora, Lakewood, even Boulder. People attacking each other in the streets. Police stretched thin. If you're hearing this, stay inside. Lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone who... Static swallowed the rest. I sat there gripping phone and radio, that hum in my chest growing louder. And a scream cut through the tunnel, sharp and distant, maybe 100 yards ahead near the western mouth, where traffic had piled up. The sound warped in there, ricocheting off concrete until distance didn't mean anything. More voices piled on, not quite screams, yelling, confusion, rising panic, a swelling chaos that prickled the back of my neck. I stepped out of the truck, and others did the same. Doors creaked open. People leaned forward, squinting toward the exit. 2 cars up, a woman climbed onto the hood of her Subaru, hands shielding her eyes from the glare. "Hey, can you see anything?" someone shouted. But she stayed frozen, just staring. Then she scrambled down, way too fast, nearly wiped out, dove back inside and slammed the locks. That's when I heard engines, deep, heavy mechanical. Not civilian, no, military weight, the kind that hauled hardware through combat zones. They roared in from behind us, pushing against the jam from the eastern entrance. 2 desert-tan Humvees barreled along the shoulder, lights slashing red and blue across the tunnel walls. Tires shrieked as they forced through. Soldiers leaned out of the windows, rifles visible, barking at everyone to get back in their vehicles. The Humvees blasted past my truck. Through the rear glass, I caught glimpses of their faces. Young, barely more than kids, early 20s maybe. And in their eyes wasn't control or authority. No, it was fear. One of them was yammering into a radio, words spilling out fast and sharp, his other hand clamped on the doorframe hard enough to bleach his knuckles. Then they were gone, the convoy vanishing toward the western mouth where the screaming had started. I threaded between the rows of cars, boots grinding over loose gravel and road grit, until I reached the Subaru. The woman who climbed onto her hood sat frozen behind the wheel, her spine straight, both hands pressed tight over her mouth like she was holding something in. I rapped on the window, and she jerked hard, her eyes snapping to me. "Hey, what'd you see?" I asked. She just shook her head, wouldn't meet my gaze, just stared ahead, breathing in thin, jagged pulls that clouded the glass. "Hey," I knocked again, lighter this time. "What's happening up there?" Her window slid down an inch. "People," she whispered. "Fighting, but not fighting. They were..." She stopped. "They were eating someone." Those words hung there, foul and heavy. "What? Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Then the window sealed shut again. I stepped back, my pulse thudding in my ears, and I fished out my phone. Oh, fuck, no signal. Not even a flicker. I tried my sister anyway. Nothing. Dialed 911. Dead silence. Behind me, another guy had climbed out of his vehicle. Big, thick through the shoulders, maybe 50 years old, flannel shirt and a trucker cap pulled low. He carried a CB handset, cable trailing back toward a parked semi a few cars behind me. "Hey, you getting anything on that?" I asked. He nodded, his face set. "Yeah, too damn much." He handed it over to me. "Here, listen." I pressed it to my ear. "All units, we have multiple reports of 1010 in progress downtown Denver. Suspects extremely violent, not responding to verbal here." Another voice barged in, panicked. "They're not stopping. We dumped a full max, center mass, and they're still moving. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. Need backup at Swedish Medical. People trying to force into the ER. They're... Oh, Jesus Christ. They're biting..." The sound of static ate the rest. The trucker took the handset back and cut the volume. "Man, it's everywhere," he said quietly. "Police, fire, EMS, every channel. Same message. Don't let anyone bidden near you. Aim for the head." We stood there letting that sink in, neither of us saying anything. More vehicles were creeping in from the eastern side now, adding to the mess. A sheriff's cruiser pushed through, its lights flashing. An ambulance screamed past. 2 more Humvees followed, barreling west towards whatever nightmare waited there. "Hey, name's Jim," the trucker said, offering his hand. "Turner." Well, his grip was rough, worn down by work. Same kind of hands I had. "Hey, you carrying?" he asked. I shook my head. Tools in the back. Hammer. Driver's pry bar. "Tire iron? Wrench?" Yeah, probably." He glanced toward the distant strobing lights at the west end. "Well, you might want to grab 'em." I didn't argue. We headed back through the crowd that had started pooling between vehicles, families clutching kids, office types in wrinkled suits looking stripped of purpose without their phones, an old couple holding hands and whispering. I pulled my tool belt from the truck bed and strapped it on. The hammer settled into my palm with a comforting weight. Solid, understandable. One thing left in the world that hadn't gone sideways in the last 15 minutes. Not single cracks, though. No, a sustained roar. Automatic fire shredding the air. Lasted about 5 seconds, maybe 6, and then it cut off. The silence slammed down. Conversations died mid-word. Every face turned toward the darkness where the shots had come from. Then the screaming returned, but louder and closer. People burst into view, sprinting through the jam, weaving between bumpers and concrete dividers. 20, 30 of them maybe, running blind, tripping, crashing into metal and walls. Some went down and stayed there. Others kept charging, driven by raw panic. Behind them, shapes emerged in the wash of headlights. But they didn't run. No, they staggered. They dragged themselves forward with broken, jerking rhythm that made my brain reject what my eyes were telling it. Human silhouettes, but, just about human. Limbs moving out of sync, joints loose and useless, like puppets whose strings had been cut. And they kept lurching forward, catching themselves at the last second, never fully falling, just lurching ahead, again and again. One of them still wore a paramedic's uniform. Half her face had been ripped away, meat and bone laid bare, shining wet under the tunnel lights. She marched straight into a concrete pillar, smacked off it, adjusted like nothing had happened, and kept advancing. "Hey, get in the truck," I said. Jim didn't budge. He just stood there watching, his eyes locked on the horror closing in. "Man, get in the truck now." Well, that snapped him loose, and he scrambled into the passenger seat while I yanked off my tool belt, tossed it behind us, and twisted the ignition. The engine growled awake. Ahead, other drivers were trying the same thing, cars jerking forward, crunching into one another in blind panic. Metal screamed somewhere close as a panel peeled back. Glass popped. A woman shrieked for her husband. Well, we weren't going anywhere. Packed in tight, boxed in by abandoned vehicles and terrified people. The infected, that's what they were, no point pretending otherwise, kept spilling toward us, more and more, flooding out of the western entrance like something had blown a dam apart. "Hey, there!" Jim pointed to a sliver of space between a minivan and the wall. "I think we can slip through on foot." "Go where?" "East. Away from that." He jammed a finger back at the advancing mass. "Hey, maybe the exit's open. Maybe we make it out." Maybe. Fuck, that word was doing heavy lifting, but staying put was suicide. I killed the engine, grabbed my belt, and we ran. Part 2. Well, we weren't the only ones. 50, maybe more, surged in the same direction, a ragged column shoving east through the tunnel. Behind us, the infected hit the jam. Windows burst. People screamed. There were wet, tearing sounds that my mind refused to label. We ran past a Honda Accord with doors flung open, engine idling. Someone's purse spilled across the seat. Past a semi stamped with Horizon freight, the cab empty, driver's door swinging. Past a motorcycle on its side, rider gone. Overhead, emergency lights flickered, some alive, some dead, leaving stretches of darkness that swallowed the road ahead. The eastern mouth had to be close, less than a mile. Just keep moving, stay ahead, reach daylight, air, and whatever waited outside. Well, I glanced back just once. I shouldn't have. Well, they'd multiplied, not dozens anymore, hundreds now, wall to wall, clogging the tunnel with flailing limbs and ruined faces. Their low, droning moan bounced off the concrete until it sounded like the mountain itself was grinding its teeth. Some crawled. Others dragged shattered legs, bone pushing through fabric. But none of them stopped, and none slowed. They just kept coming, driven by something empty and relentless. And in the center of that swarm I spotted the fuel tanker. It had been part of the jam earlier, part a couple of 100 yards back. Now the driver stumbled toward us, uniform drenched in something dark, mouth open in a silent scream. Behind him, the tanker leaned crooked, nose crushed into the wall, side panel split open. And the fuel was spilling. I smelled it, sharp gasoline cutting through exhaust, blood, and waste. It spread across the concrete in a slow black sheen, catching the emergency lights like a warped mirror. "Hey, Jim," I said, "we need to pick it up." "I'm trying." Soldiers appeared ahead, moving fast through the gridlock. 8 of them, maybe, armored up, rifles ready, advancing with cold precision. The sergeant barked commands, spreading them across the tunnel in a firing line. "Fall back," he shouted. "Civilians, behind us." Well, we didn't hesitate. I shoved through the press with Jim on my heels until we reached them. The sergeant grabbed my shoulder and pulled me past. "Down. Stay down." He then turned to his squad. "Right, fire on my mark. Headshots, control bursts, make it count." The infected closed in, close enough now that I could pick out faces in the mass. Ordinary people, wrapped in ordinary clothes, stripped of everything human. A businessman with his tie still neat, one eye dangling loose. A woman in yoga gear, stomach ripped open, guts swinging as she walked. A teenager with headphones around his neck, skull crushed in on one side. All of them kept advancing. "Mark," the sergeant said. The tunnel detonated with gunfire. Muzzle flashes strobed through the gloom, chopping everything into slices of light and shadow. Shell casings rained under the concrete, their metallic clatter drowned under the thunder of rifles. Rounds slammed into flesh, heads snapped back, bodies folded, infected dropping where they stood. But it didn't matter. There were too many. For every one that hit the ground, 3 more crawled over it. God, they poured forward, trampling their own dead, squeezing through the wreckage, relentless and rising like floodwater. "Reloading," the soldier shouted. "Keep firing," the sergeant snapped. "Do not let them through." But they were already through. One of them, a man who'd been a cop, I guessed, still dressed in tactical pants and vest, erupted from between 2 cars on the flank. He slammed into a soldier before anyone reacted. They crashed down together, his rifle skidding away. The infected tore into him, jaws finding the seam between helmet and armor. The sergeant spun and fired 3 shots straight into its skull. Bone and grey matter burst across the pavement. But it was done. The soldier lay there, blood surging from a shredded throat. "Medic!" someone yelled, but nobody came. No medics, no rescue. Just us, the swarm, and a tanker bleeding gasoline 200 yards back. The bitten soldier spasmed, once, twice, then went still. "Hey, back away from him," the sergeant ordered. "All of you, now." We retreated, forming space around the body. His eyes were dull glass, his chest motionless. He was dead, no question. Then his fingers twitched. His head rolled sideways, tendons pulling tight along his neck. His jaw snapped open and shut, teeth clicking. Then a guttural noise crawled up from inside him. "Oh, Jesus," Someone breathed. He sat up, stiff and unnatural, like his limbs were relearning motion. His eyes locked onto us then, and there was nothing human left behind them, only hunger, blank and absolute. The sergeant ended it without blinking, one round through the forehead. "Fall back to the eastern entrance," he shouted. "Move!" We ran again. Soldiers kept firing behind us, burning through magazines to cover the retreat. I grabbed an older man who'd stumbled, dragged him upright, hauled him forward, and Jim was shouting now, but the roar of gunfire, the screaming, and my own pulse drowned everything out. The smell of gasoline thickened, sharp and suffocating. I risked another glance back. The tanker driver, twisted now, changed, staggered into the spreading slick. The sergeant saw it too, saw the chain reaction lining up. His face drained of color. "God, get down!" he screamed. "Everybody, down!" Gunfire sparked into the fuel. The world went white. A blast of superheated air smashed into me, ripped me off my feet, hurled me forward like I weighed nothing. I slammed into the ground, rolled, stopped against something hard. My ears shrieked with a high, piercing whine that drowned the universe. Heat rolled over me in crushing waves, searing, stealing the breath from my chest. God, I couldn't see, I couldn't hear, couldn't even pull air. Then, slowly, piece by piece, reality crawled back. The ringing faded enough for other sounds to bleed through. Crackling fire, twisted metal, some sobbing. I blinked through streaming eyes, smoke tearing at them, and forced myself upright. The tunnel entrance was gone. Where daylight and open air had been, there was now rubble, rock, concrete, rebar tangled together. The explosion had collapsed the western portal, burying it under tons of debris, a solid wall from floor to ceiling. We were sealed in. Cars near the blast burned fiercely. The tanker had turned into a blazing monument, flames clawing toward the ceiling. Black smoke boiled upward, mixing with drifting dust and chemical haze. Emergency lights flickered and then died, one after another, dropping whole stretches of the tunnel into darkness. Bodies were scattered everywhere. Some of them twitched, but most didn't. The soldiers were finished, every last one of them. Our shield gone in a matter of seconds. I spotted the sergeant about 20 feet away, pinned under a slab of broken concrete. His arms were bent at angles that shouldn't exist. Blood pooled beneath him, creeping slowly through the dust and rubble. Jim staggered out from behind an overturned sedan, face smeared with black soot, one hand clamped over his ear. "Can't hear right," he shouted, voice too loud. "Everything's muffled." Same," I said, though my own words barely even reached me. Other survivors clawed themselves upright. 30 maybe less. Hard to count through smoke and chaos. A woman in medical scrubs was already moving around the injured, focused and steady. Nurse or EMT, I figured. She dropped beside a man skewered through the leg with rebar, studying the wound like she'd done it 1,000 times before. "Hey, we should help," I said. Jim grabbed my arm. "We should leave. Eastern exit now, before more of those things show. People are hurt. People are dying. We stay here, we die with them." Well, he wasn't wrong. But the sound of crying, of wounded people begging, locked my feet into place. The woman in scrubs looked up at me. Blood streaked her hands and clothes, but her expression stayed calm and sharp. "Hey, you military?" she asked. Construction," I answered. "He's a trucker." She nodded once, filing that information away. "Hey, Sharon, EMT, off-duty. Guess that doesn't matter now." She motioned at the injured. "I can stabilize some, but I can't move them alone." "We can't stay," Jim added. Sharon glanced toward the flames. "He's right. That fire's going to chew through the oxygen. The smoke's already thick. She wasn't exaggerating. The air had turned heavy, layered with soot, each breath rougher than the last. How many can walk? I asked. Half, maybe. She shook her head then. The rest, I'll do what I can. The next 10 minutes blurred into controlled chaos. Jim and I hauled the walking wounded upright, grouped them together. Sharon handled the worst cases, stuffing wounds, building splints from twisted metal and ripped clothing, making brutal choices with the kind of cold necessity that sticks to you afterwards. Some we couldn't help. A woman crushed beneath a fallen light fixture, a man breathing in wet, broken rattles, his ribs gone, his lungs torn. We left them. Moving them would have only stretched out the pain. Behind us the fire roared stronger. Smoke thickened overhead, forcing us low where the air wasn't poison yet. But heat built, turning the tunnel into an oven. "We go now," Sharon said. "Now. Anyone who can't walk gets carried." We got most of them moving. 23 survivors by my count. They leaned on each other, limping forward. Jim and I lifted an unconscious woman between us, her head hanging, her breath shallow but steady. We headed east, away from the blaze, away from the collapsed entrance, deeper into the mountain's gut. Most emergency lights were dead now, just a few flickering on stubbornly. Headlights from abandoned cars lit the path, throwing long twitching shadows over the walls. And behind us, shapes stirred through the haze. Didn't see them clearly. No, just hunched outlines pulling themselves over debris. Then more. Survivors of the blast. "Right. Faster," I told the group. "Don't look back. Just move." We pushed on toward the promise of daylight at the eastern end. Don't know how long. Not far now. But enough, through wrecked vehicles, flickering gloom, and the air thick with the taste of blood and burning rubber. A distance with the transformed somewhere behind us. A distance with no guarantee the far side wasn't sealed too. I adjusted my grip on the woman, felt the weight of the hammer on my belt, and kept going. Stopping meant dying, and I wasn't ready for that. Not buried under rock, not in the dark, not forgotten. The tunnel swallowed us whole, and we let it, because there was nowhere else left. Dust drifted down like ash. I stood there, my lungs raw, tasting copper and concrete, watching the haze curl lazily through the passage. The woman Sharon and I had carried started coming around now, groaning, her eyes blinking open to a world she didn't yet understand. I eased her down beside a wrecked Honda CR-V, windows blown out, interior packed with debris. "Stay here," I told her. "Don't move unless you have to." Well, she nodded, too drained to argue. Around us, the survivors huddled in tight knots between dead vehicles. 23 people. That's how many we dragged out of the wreckage. 23 out of how many? 100? 2? I didn't run the numbers. Doing that would have cracked something inside me. Jim stood a few feet off, the CB handset jammed to his ears, flipping through channels. I could read the result on his face before he even spoke, though. "Nothing," he said quietly. "Static. Screaming. Every frequency." He lowered the set then. "We're alone." Sharon kept moving among the injured, checking pulses, inspecting wounds by the pale wash of headlights. She paused beside a middle-aged guy slumped against a minivan, fingers pressed to his neck. After a long beat, she shut his eyes and walked on. "How bad?" I asked when she reached me. 3 dead, 4 critical. The rest can walk, barely. She wiped her hands on scrubs already ruined beyond saving. I mean, we need proper supplies. Antibiotics, surgical tools, clean water. She let out a short, bitter laugh, though. "We need a hospital. And that's not happening." "Nope," I said. "It isn't." She glanced towards the collapsed west end, flames still licking rubble and throwing orange light across the concrete. "So, what's next?" "East," I said. "A couple of clicks to the other exit. We make it there, we get out. If that end's blocked too? I didn't answer because if it was, we were finished. Sealed in a concrete coffin with thinning air, no supplies, and monsters trailing us. A scream snapped through the quiet. A woman in shredded business suit pointed between the cars. I followed her line of sight and felt my gut drop. One of the wounded had stood up. He'd been lying near the back, a construction guy with a split forehead. I'd seen him earlier, awake, talking. Now he swayed upright, shoulders hunched, head cocked sideways, his arms limp. His eyes were different, cloudy and distant. "Nobody move," I said. Too late. An older man, Dawson, someone had called him, stepped forward, hand extended, concern etched into his face. "Hey," he said gently, "you okay? Sit back down. You've got a bad head." The infected lunged for him. Dawson stumbled too slowly. Jim moved faster. 3 strides closed the gap and he swung the tire iron. It cracked into the man's temple with a wet, ugly sound that bounced between the vehicles. The body hit the ground, twitched once, and stopped. Dawson stood there shaking, staring down. "He was alive," he whispered. "Talking to me 15 minutes ago." "No," Sharon said softly. "He was bitten. Explosion or before, it doesn't matter. The bite killed him." She trailed off then, her voice thinning. "What came after?" "Hey, how long?" I asked. "From bite to turning." She shook her head. "Minutes, maybe less." Her eyes swept the group, the professional mask sliding back into place. "Right. We check everyone. Anyone bitten gets isolated." "Isolated where?" Jim asked. "We're stuck in a tunnel." "Separated then, marked." Her voice hardened. "Because if we don't know who's infected, then we're all already dead." No one argued at that. We spent 5 minutes inspecting everyone. Bites, scratches, anything breaking skin. We found 2. Claire, mid-20s, teeth marks on her forearm. And an older man with his shoulder torn open, barely conscious, grey and slick with sweat. "I'm fine," Claire insisted, clutching her arm. "It's just a scratch. It doesn't even hurt." Sharon studied it, her face blank. "When?" "During the panic before the blast. Someone grabbed me. I pulled away." Her eyes jumped between us. "I'm fine. I feel fine." "For now," Sharon said quietly. Claire stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're infected, both of you." She nodded toward the older man then. "Soon. Minutes, maybe an hour. You'll become like them. Look, I'm sorry." Claire staggered back, shaking her head violently. No, you're wrong. I won't. "Hey, we can't risk it," Jim said, his voice flat as steel. "So, what?" Claire's voice cracked and spiked, scraping the ceiling of hysteria. "You were going to shoot me? End me over a damn scratch?" Well, I looked at Sharon then. She didn't blink, but she locked onto me, hard and steady, then shifted her eyes to the older man slumped against a car door. He'd gone completely vacant now, just sitting there, staring through the windshield like his soul had already clocked out. "We don't dump people," Sharon said. Her voice didn't shake. "Not yet. We watch them. The second they change, we handle it. But until that second, they're still human." Jim opened his mouth, ready to argue, but I cut him off with a raised hand. "She's right," I said. "We don't know how fast this infection burns through someone. We're not executioners." "We might have to be," Jim muttered. "When that day comes," I said, "we'll do what needs doing, but not before." Claire's shoulders collapsed like someone had cut her strings. Relief hit her so hard she almost folded. "Thank you. Oh, God, thank you." "Look, just save it," Sharon said flatly. She shoved a flashlight into Claire's trembling hands. Right, you walk at the back. Stay with him. She jerked her chin at the older man. You feel anything shift, fever, confusion, anything. You tell us immediately. No hesitation, you understand? Claire nodded quickly, tears sliding down her cheeks. Hey, and, Claire, I added. If either of you turn, we won't hesitate. Her lips quivered at this. I know. There were 23 of us left. That was it now. Part 3. We moved out in a loose, jagged formation through the graveyard of stalled vehicles. Jim and I took points. I carried my hammer, he gripped a tire iron so tight his knuckles had gone bone white. Sharon kept to the center near the injured. Dawson limped at the rear with Roy, the mechanic, each of them armed with crowbars ripped from abandoned trucks. Claire and the old man walked between them, boxed in but still part of the line. Her flashlight beam jittered wildly, slicing through the dark in nervous spasms. The deeper we pushed into the tunnel, the more the emergency lights died off. What little illumination we had came from forgotten headlights, our flashlights, and the sickly glow of cell phones that had long since lost signal. The beams carved narrow tunnels through smoke and dust, revealing fragments of the world and nothing beyond them. And to tell you the truth, every shadow looked like it was breathing. Every open car door, every flipped semi, every blind corner felt like a loaded gun. We advanced inch by inch, checking angles, pausing to listen. The only sounds were boots scraping pavement, strained breathing, and the distant crackle of fire still chewing through wreckage behind us. About a quarter mile in, we found the first body. It was draped across the hood of a Jeep Wrangler, face down, arms flung wide like he'd tried to fly. Early 30s. A reflective vest stretched across his back. Colorado Department of Transportation. His throat had been ripped open so violently the spine showed through. Sharon checked for her pulse anyway. Nothing. Right, keep moving, she said. We stepped around him. More bodies followed, some intact, but most weren't. They were scattered through the tunnel like broken mannequins, slumped behind steering wheels, folded over hoods, crumpled against concrete barriers. The infected had passed through recently. The blood still shone wet and dark and was sticky underfoot. Halfway to the next emergency exit junction, we saw movement. She'd once been a businesswoman. Pencil skirt, blouse, one high heel still clinging to her foot, the other foot bare, her toenails painted a bright coral pink that looked obscene in this gloom. She crouched between two sedans, hunched over something we couldn't fully see. Wet, tearing sounds filled the air, steady and deliberate. My skin crawled. Jim touched my shoulder and nodded past her. Shape shifted deeper in the dark. 3, maybe 4 of them, hard to count with the flicker and haze. Back up, I whispered. Slow, no noise. We retreated step by careful step until we'd put 50 feet between us and the feeding infected. The group tightened up, our breaths shallow, panic simmering just below the surface. We can't go that way, someone breathed. Well, there is no other way, Jim shot back, unless you feel like climbing over all this. Could we? The same voice asked. Maybe, if we stay quiet. His eyes then flicked over the wounded. Dawson's heavy limp, the woman who'd only just regained consciousness and can barely stand. But, well, they can't, he finished. Sharon stepped forward then, squinting into the murk. How many? 4 at least, I said. Maybe more. Hey, we could take them, someone suggested. 4 on 1 is garbage odds, I replied. And that's if there's only 4. So what then? Jim demanded. We wait? Before I could answer, a sound rolled through the tunnel behind us. A moan. Long, low, starving. Came from the direction of the collapsed entrance, the one we'd escaped. There were more of them, drawn by the noise, or just drifting blindly, pulled by whatever animal instinct still twitched inside them. We were pinned in. Feeders ahead, hunters behind, with no path forward, no path back. "There," Roy said, stabbing a finger toward a slit of space between an overturned bus and the tunnel wall. "We squeeze through that. We come out past those things." Dawson squinted at it. "Oh, that's tight, real tight." "Well, then we get skinny," Roy shot back. He was already moving, palms sliding over dented metal, testing the gap like he was checking a coffin for size. "Yep, we'll take one of us at a time, but it's doable." Well, no one had a better plan. Jim went first. He turned sideways, tire iron raised over his shoulder, and slid into the crack. The dark quickly swallowed him whole, and for a few seconds there was nothing, no sound, no signal, just the hum of my own pulse in my ears. And then his voice drifted back. "Clear. Move." One by one, we fed ourselves into the slot. Well, the injured took longer. Sharon stayed glued to them, whispering steadily, calm words while guiding her shoulders and hips through the metal choke point. Dawson struggled, his breath rasping, chest heaving as if the walls were trying to crush him flat. But he forced it, and inch by inch he dragged himself through. I brought up the rear. Hammer locked in my fist, I kept glancing over my shoulder at the shifting dark behind us. Shapes were moving back there, slowly at first, and then not so slow. Oh, the gap was a steel vice. The bus frame dug into my chest. The concrete wall shaved skin off my back. I had to twist my head sideways just to fit my skull through. There wasn't room to breathe properly. My lungs kept trying to expand and hitting metal instead. And then, halfway through it, I heard it. Footsteps. Not the dragging kind. No, running. They were closing fast. I tried to turn and look, but I was wedged too tight. All I saw was shadows snapping into focus, figures barreling straight for the slit where I was pinned like meat in a trap. "Turner! Turner!" Jim's voice cracked sharply through the dark. "Move!" I drove myself forward, ignoring the burn as steel skinned my shoulders raw. Oh, the gap felt like it was shrinking, clamping down, holding me there as those footsteps pounded ever closer. Then hands seized my arms from the other side, and they yanked hard. I shot through the opening like a cork under pressure, stumbled out, and slammed straight into Jim. He caught me before I went down. Behind us, something smashed into the bus, and the whole vehicle jolted. Hands forced into the crack, grey, twitching fingers clawing for space. Nails ripped off against metal with wet snaps. A face shoved into the slit, its jaw snapping, teeth clacking inches from freedom. It tried to push through, but bone and skull wouldn't compress. The gap was too small. We backed off fast, putting space between us and the trapped infected. The tunnel opened up ahead. There were fewer vehicles and more breathing room. Overhead, a strip of emergency light still flickered, coughing out a sick yellow glow that made everything look diseased. "Hey, everyone good?" Sharon asked. A chorus of shaky yeses answered her. One woman sobbed quietly into her sleeve. Dawson looked like death now, his skin drained, the limp worse than before, but he was still upright. Being alive counted. We pushed east, flickering to the center lane now, away from the vehicles where anything could be crouched and waiting. The blaze behind us had dwindled to a faint smear of orange in the distance. Smoke still clung to the ceiling in drifting layers, twisting through the light beams like it had a mind of its own. Well, time seemed to blur. 30 minutes, maybe an hour, could have been longer. Oh, my legs throbbed, my shoulders felt flayed where the metal had scraped them open. The hammer grew heavier with every step until I had to keep swapping hands just to stop my fingers from locking up. There was a noise from behind me then. Someone going down. I turned to look. Dawson was on one knee, his face knotted with pain, clutching his ankle like it was about to come off. "It's nothing," he snapped, waving Sharon away. "I just need a second." let me see, she said. No, it's nothing. She ignored him and rolled his pant leg up anyway. God, his ankle was a mess, swollen to twice its size, blotched purple and black like rotting fruit. That's not nothing, she said. That's a bad sprain. It could be fractured. Can you walk? I asked. Dawson forced himself upright. He put weight on it and sucked in a sharp breath. Tried again. Then his face went the color of ash. Yeah, he lied. I can walk. Well, he made it 3 steps before his leg buckled. Roy caught him before he hit the ground. Right, we need a break, Sharon said. Just a few minutes. They're done for now. She was right. The group was fading fast, their eyes dull, their movements slow and sloppy. The adrenaline that had carried us this far was burning out, leaving nothing but exhaustion and fear in its wake. Okay, 5 minutes, I said, and not a second more. We found a patch of open ground near a row of abandoned sedans and dropped there like broken machines. People perched on hoods, slumped against dented doors, shut their eyes and finally let the shock seep in. Oh, the things we'd crawled through, the people we'd left burning behind us. I walked the edges of our little camp, scanning sight lines between vehicles, listening for anything that didn't belong. Jim fell in beside me, his jaw tight and his eyes hollow. Listen, we're not all getting out, he said under his breath. You know that. Don't. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being honest. Dawson can barely stand. Half of them are bleeding or limping. We've got maybe a mile left and we're already running on fumes. He hesitated, then continued. And of course that's if the east exit isn't blocked. It's not, I said. You don't know that. I have to believe it's open, I answered. Because if I don't, I'll sit down right here and let it end. And I'm not ready for that. He studied me, then gave a slow nod. Yeah, fine. We keep moving, but if it comes down to it, if we have to choose between saving all of them or just some, you need to be ready to make that call. Before I could fire back, though, Roy's voice tore through the tunnel. Dawson, hey, somebody help, he's down. I spun, hammer already raised. People were scrambling backward from the rear of the group. Dawson lay twisted on the pavement, his bad ankle folded at a sick angle, his body jerking violently. Roy knelt beside him, hands on his shoulders. Hey, don't touch him, Sharon shouted as she ran. But too late. Dawson's arms shot up and clamped around Roy's wrist. His head snapped back and I saw his face gone. The skin drained to grey, the mouth hanging loose, the eyes empty. Back up! Back up! I shoved through the crowd. Dawson lunged at Roy with a guttural snarl. Roy ripped his arm free just as Dawson's teeth clacked shut on air. No! Roy gasped, stumbling back. He was fine. I checked him. He wasn't even bitten. Sharon moved in a slow circle, calm as a surgeon. Dawson, can you hear me? He jerked toward her voice, the movements twitchy and broken. She slipped around him, her eyes scanning his neck, his arms, and then she yanked up his pant leg. There it was. A bite on his calf. Small, almost clean, easy to miss in the chaos. God, he was already infected when we did the checks, she said. Must have happened in the first rush. Adrenaline covered it. Let him keep moving. She looked at me then. He's gone. Dawson turned toward the sound of us breathing. He staggered forward, tripped on the ruined ankle and crashed down, then clawed himself upright again. Nobody reached for him this time. Hey, someone has to do it, Sharon said quietly, before he hurts someone. Jim stepped up, the tire iron ready. I'll handle it. No, I said. I will. Didn't fully know why. Maybe because I'd talked to Dawson. Maybe because sending Claire and that silent old man to the back had already hollowed something out inside me. Or maybe I just didn't want Jim adding another ghost to his pile. I moved in slowly, the hammer gripped in both hands. Dawson's head tracked me. His jaw was grinding, that wet rasp building in his throat. He came at me faster than I expected, though, fingers clawing for my chest. I stepped aside and swung. The hammer connected with the back of his skull, with a dull, final crack. He dropped hard, twitched once, and then nothing. I stood over him, my lungs burning, staring at what used to be a man. Maybe someone's grandfather. Maybe someone who'd kissed his wife that morning and never pictured dying under a mountain, skull crushed by a stranger's tool. "Right, we move," I said. "Now, no more breaks. We don't stop until we hit the exit, or we don't stop at all." No one argued with me. We left him where he lay and pushed deeper into the tunnel. 22 of us now. Maybe less than a mile to go. The eastern entrance had to be close. It had to. I glanced back once. Claire was still upright, but her steps were dragging. The older man beside her had gone vacant again, moving only when Roy shoved him forward. They were both fading. Time was chewing through them. Then ahead, I saw it. Light. It was faint and distant, but real. Daylight spilling into the tunnel like some promise. And for a second, hope punched through the exhaustion. We were going to make it. We were going to make it. And then the sound started. Low at first, not a single voice, many. Dozens. It rolled through the passage from the direction of the light. It was growing louder, filling the space wall to wall. It wasn't a scream. It was a chorus of hunger. Oh, I felt it in my chest, in my teeth, in the base of my skull. Something ancient and terrified was waking up inside me. And we rounded the last bend. Well, the eastern exit wasn't sealed. The tunnel mouth stood open, flooded with golden daylight. Beautiful. Wide open and completely out of reach. Because between us and that light stood the transformed. They were stacked at the mouth of the tunnel, dozens on dozens of bodies jammed together in a writhing mass. Some stood and swayed like drunks, others crawled under bumpers and between axles. A few dragged themselves forward with dead legs scraping uselessly behind them. The noise they made bounced off the concrete and came back at us, amplified, a layered, grinding chorus that set my teeth on edge. And behind them, past that wall of twitching flesh, I saw what was left of a failed defense. Military trucks angled across lanes, concrete barricades, coils of razor wire. The government had tried to lock this end down too. They hadn't managed it. Now all of those things were sealed in here with us. "Oh, God!" someone breathed. The horde had noticed us. Heads turned at the same time, like a single organism snapping to attention. The sound sharpened, eager and urgent. They started forward in that broken-off rhythm march, closing the gap. And from behind us, back toward the west end, we heard the answer. Part 4. Calls, echoing down the tunnel. Well, the ones we'd slipped past earlier had caught the scent, drawn by the noise. They were coming from that direction too. Oh, we were so deep inside a mountain, boxed in by the transformed on both ends, with no exits, no cover. Gunfire rattled somewhere above us. Tight, controlled bursts. Military. They were up there on the surface fighting their own war, clueless that survivors were trapped underground waiting to be erased. I grabbed Jim's CB radio and keyed the mic. "This is Turner Lubin. Civilians trapped inside the Eisenhower Tunnel. 22 survivors. Hostiles closing in from both directions. If anyone hears this, we need immediate extraction. Please." Static. I tried again. "Turner Lubin, in the Eisenhower Tunnel. 22 civilians requesting immediate assistance. Please respond." And then a voice cut through. "Eisenhower Tunnel, this is Officer Douglas, Colorado National Guard. Confirm you are civilians trapped inside the tunnel. Confirmed, I shot back. Relief hit hard enough to make my knees weak. 22 survivors, hostiles inbound from both sides. We need extraction now. A pause. Eisenhower Tunnel, be advised. The tunnel is considered lost. Orders are to seal both entrances. Demolition charges are currently being set. You have approximately 15 minutes before detonation. What? No! I yelled into the radio. There are survivors down here. You can't blow the tunnel. I'm sorry, Douglas said, his voice tight. I don't have authority to countermand these orders. The infection is spreading. Containment is priority 1. The horde was about 50 feet away now, getting closer. I could make out faces, normal faces that had been twisted into something else. Teachers, mechanics, parents. The skin intact, but the eyes wrong, like something had crawled inside and taken over the controls. There has to be another way out, I said, forcing my voice steady. Emergency exits, maintenance shafts, anything. Oh, the silence stretched. And then Douglas spoke again. There is one option. A maintenance access shaft, vertical climb. Should put you roughly 200 meters back toward the tunnel center, but you'll have to move through hostile territory to reach it. Well, we'll take it. Right, listen carefully. You got 15 minutes before those charges go, maybe less. The ladder in that shaft runs 40 feet straight up. Can everyone in your group make that climb? Well, I looked at the survivors, the wounded, the exhausted, the drained. Claire barely standing, skin gone the color of ash. The old man beside her drifting further away with every step, his eyes clouding, body moving on borrowed time. Yeah, we'll make it, I said. Right, talk us through it. Coordinates won't do you any good in there, Douglas replied. I'll guide you. Follow my directions exactly and move fast. That horde isn't going to give you space. Well, their sound was swelling now. 30 feet away, 20. Their broken march echoing through the tunnel like a heartbeat. Right, everyone, I shouted. Back toward the tunnel center. Now, move. Well, we ran like prey, our lungs tearing, feet hammering pavement while the mountain geared up to bury us alive. Next left. Douglas's voice cracked through the CB. Between the semi and concrete barrier, you'll see a yellow maintenance door marked E7. That's your exit. I took point, sprinting flat out, cutting between dead cars and jackknife trucks. The sound behind us was swelling, rasping throats, broken shrieks, echoing from both directions now. Well, they were converging, pulled in by our noise, by the heat of us. We weren't working in minutes anymore. We were burning through seconds. The yellow door showed up exactly where Douglas said it would, half hidden behind a trailer's crushed fender. Jim hit it first, grabbed the handle and yanked. Nothing. He slammed his shoulder into it. The metal rang but didn't budge. Oh, it's locked, he shouted. Emergency release, Douglas barked through the static. Red panel to the right. Pull it down hard. I spotted it and ripped it down. Something inside the mechanism clanged and the door snapped loose, swinging inward to reveal a narrow vertical shaft. The steel ladder was bolted to the wall. Climbing into darkness, our flashlights couldn't fully pierce. Right, go! I shoved the nearest survivor forward. Climb, don't stop. They scrambled up one at a time, frantic and clumsy. Hands slipped on rungs wet with condensation. Boots scraped metal. Sharon stayed low, steadying the injured, pushing them upward, talking them through the panic. The horde was so close now, a solid wall of grabbing hands and gnashing teeth. Roy climbed, then another man, then the woman with broken ribs, clutching her side with every breath. 2 people boosted her, guiding her feet to each rung until someone above reached down and dragged her higher. Hey, Turner! Jim grabbed my shoulder and pointed. They'd hit the ring of vehicles around us. Oh, they poured over the hoods, squeezed through shattered windows, crawled under bumpers. It was a tide that didn't slow. Couldn't. The closest one wore a highway patrol uniform, badge still polished, one eye socket empty and black. I swung. The hammer crushed his jaw sideways. Bone gave with a wet crack. He dropped. Another one filled the space immediately, then another. "We can't hold this," Jim yelled, backing toward the shaft. The older man was at the ladder now, trying to climb. His hands kept missing the rungs. He grabbed, slipped, grabbed again. His skin had faded to the color of old paper left out in the sun. Sharon and Roy tried to steady him, but his body wasn't listening anymore. "Right. Leave him," I said. "We can't get him up," Sharon snapped. "No, we can't." I locked eyes with her. "You know we can't." She looked at him, his glazed stare, the slack mouth, and something inside her folded. "Oh, God forgive us," she whispered. Claire stood at the mouth of the shaft, shaking. Her skin had gone that same ash grey, but her eyes were still clear. It was still her. "Hey, can you climb?" I asked. She nodded once. "Then go, fast." She grabbed the ladder. Her hands trembled as she pulled herself up. 1 rung, 2, 3. Each movement looked like it could cost her everything she had left. Her breath was coming in tight, broken gasps. 4, 5, and then she wavered. "Just keep going," Sharon shouted. "Don't think about the top, just the next rung." Claire's fingers started to slip, and her head sagged forward. And when she looked down at us, her eyes were changing, irises clouding over, that hollow vacancy spreading across her face like frost. I can't," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I can't." Her grip opened, and she fell. Oh, she hit the concrete hard. The crack of bone echoed in the shaft entrance. Her neck bent at an angle that should have ended it all. For a second, she lay still. Then her chest jerked. Her eyes snapped open, fully clouded now. Nothing left inside. She rolled onto her hands and knees, her joints bent all wrong, movements jerky and unnatural. And she lunged at Sharon. But I moved first. I grabbed Sharon's arm and yanked her clear, shoved her toward the ladder. "Climb, now!" And Claire, well, what had been Claire, pivoted toward me instead. So I brought the hammer down. I hated it, hated every second, hated the world that forced my hand. She dropped and didn't get back up. The other transformed were only 10 feet away now, then 5. Oh, I could smell them. Rot, copper, something chemical that burned the inside of my nose. Jim was halfway up the ladder, Sharon right behind him, Roy climbing above her. I jumped, caught the bottom rung, and hauled myself up. Oh, hands snapped at my boots, fingers scraped across leather, clawing for purchase as I climbed into the dark. I kicked straight down, felt bone give under my heel. Something crunched. The grip loosened, and I climbed. Well, the shaft was tight, barely room for my shoulders, and every time I moved up a rung, the hammer at my belt slammed into the wall and threw me off balance. I kept climbing anyway, because below us, they'd found the ladder. They started up after us, jerky, uncoordinated, but relentless. Hands and feet scraping metal, closing the distance. "God, how much further?" Someone above me choked out. 30 feet. Douglas's voice crackled from the radio clipped to my belt. "Keep climbing. You got maybe 5 minutes before detonation." God, 5 minutes. My arms were on fire, my muscles were shaking. The ladder felt endless, disappearing into shadow that never seemed to get closer. And the sound below grew louder, that wet, rasping chorus bouncing around the shaft until it felt like it was vibrating inside my skull. Oh, a hand clamped around my boot, and it yanked hard. I kicked backward and connected with something soft, and the grip slipped free. I didn't look down again. I just climbed faster. Didn't think about what would happen if my hands failed, if the strength ran dry. And then, light. Real light. A square hatch, maybe 10 feet above, propped open. Sky beyond it, silhouettes of soldiers framed in gold. "Move," one of them shouted, reaching down. "Come on." Jim hit the top first. They grabbed him and hauled him through. Then Sharon, then the others, dragged out one by one and shoved away from the opening toward waiting vehicles. I was 3 rungs down from the top when something below wrapped both hands around my ankle. I looked down. God, the shaft was packed with them. Faces stacked one under another, pale and tilted upward, eyes locked on me, climbing with mechanical persistence. So I kicked again, and the grip tightened. It dragged me down half a rung. My hand slipped on sweat-slick metal. Then Jim was above me, leaning through the hatch, and he grabbed my wrist. "I've got you." He pulled, but they pulled back. For a second I was suspended between them, arms stretched to tearing, my body caught in a tug-of-war between the living and the dead. Jim roared and yanked harder. My boot tore free with a wet, sucking sound. I scrambled the last 3 rungs and burst through the hatch onto the mountainside. The air hit me cold and clean. The Rocky Mountains spread out under a sunset soaked in gold and blood. Soldiers slammed the hatch closed and spun the wheel tight. Almost immediately, something inside began hammering against it. Ruined fists pounding for daylight. "Clear out," a lieutenant shouted, waving us toward the line of Humvees 50 yards away. "Charges blow in 2 minutes. Move." We stumbled across uneven ground. Sharon helped the injured. Jim supported an older woman who twisted her ankle during the climb. I counted heads. 20. We'd started with 23. Dawson was gone, taken by the infection. Claire had fallen. The old man never made it onto the ladder. 20 survivors out of the hundreds who'd been trapped in that tunnel. The Humvees idled near a makeshift command post. Radios crackled. Soldiers moved with tight, controlled urgency. Officer Douglas stood by the lead vehicle, radio still in hand. He was younger than I'd pictured, maybe 30 at most. His face looked like it had aged 10 years in a day, though. He met my eyes. "Hey, you made it. Because of you." He gave a small nod, but there was no pride in it, just fatigue. "Right, get in. We're pulling back to Peterson Air Force Base. It's the last secure site within 50 miles. "What about the others?" Sharon asked. "Anyone else inside?" Douglas glanced toward the tunnel entrance, where the transformed still pressed against the barricades. "No other survivors in there," he said quietly. "And soon there won't be a tunnel either." Right on cue, the mountain trembled. Deep, subterranean. The demolition charges went off. The sound was distant but heavy, a muffled concussion that traveled up through my boots and into my bones. The ground shook. Dust burst from both tunnel mouths in thick plumes. And then the mountain groaned. Rock and earth collapsed inward, swallowing the western entrance in a rolling avalanche of stone. Seconds later, the eastern side folded in on itself, concrete and steel crumpling like paper under the weight. In under half a minute, the tunnel was gone. All that remained was a scar carved into the mountainside, a wound that would take years to fade. Everything still inside, the transformed, the bodies, the ones we couldn't save, buried, erased. I watched it happen and felt nothing at all. I was too drained. "Load up," Douglas ordered. "We move before dark." We climbed into the Humvees without a word. I ended up in the lead vehicle with Jim, Sharon, and 3 soldiers who looked just as wrecked as I felt. None of us spoke. The doors slammed shut, engines revved, and the convoy rolled out, leaving the crushed tunnel behind us as we headed east, toward whatever scraps of civilization were still standing. Through the window I watched the sun bleed out over the Rockies. The peaks burned amber and gold, calm and perfect, like nothing in the world was wrong. It was a lie. Down in the valleys, everything was falling apart. The dashboard radio crackled, and a woman's voice came through, steady, trained, but stretched thin. "All units be advised. Denver is lost. Repeat, Denver is lost. Infection has spread beyond containment. The governor has authorized evacuation of all remaining military personnel. Civilian population is... Again, static swallowed the rest. The driver twisted the dial, searching for something clearer. But all he found was more noise. Fractured emergency broadcasts, half-heard screams, the digital death rattle of a country tearing itself open. Jim leaned toward me. It's everywhere, isn't it? Yeah, I said. I think it is. Sharon sat across from us, staring at her hands. They were still smeared with blood. Claire's, Dawson's, others we'd never had time to know. She tried to save every one of them, and it hadn't been enough. Hey, you did everything you could, I told her. She looked up, tears tracked down her face, but her voice didn't shake. It wasn't enough. Well, it never is, one of the soldiers muttered. But you're alive, that counts. Did it? 20 of us had made it out. 20, out of hundreds trapped in that tunnel. How many had we left behind? How many had slipped through our fingers because we weren't strong enough, fast enough, ruthless enough? The Humvee hit a pothole and jolted me back to the present. Through the windshield, the highway stretched empty into the fading light, vanishing into a horizon that promised nothing good. Behind us, the mountain stood quiet, sealed up tight, holding its dead. Somewhere under tons of rock, Claire lay still, the fight finally over. Dawson, too, the old man, all the others whose names no one would ever log. Families would wait for them, call their phones, search shelters, cling to hope. They'd never know the mountain had swallowed them whole. Yeah, Turner. Jim touched my shoulder. You okay? No, I said, but I'm breathing. He nodded. Yeah, that's enough for now. Maybe it was. Maybe survival was the only currency left, even if it meant leaving parts of yourself buried in the dark, even if it meant carrying the weight of every call you made every time you chose to live instead of dragging someone else along with you. The sun slipped behind the peaks. Night dropped fast, turning the world into headlights and long shadows and distant fires flickering on the horizon. The radio kept spitting out evacuation orders, containment failures, desperate voices begging for help that wasn't coming. The infection was spreading, and the world was ending, and we were driving toward whatever came after. All we carried were our lives, our guilt, and the memory of a tunnel under a mountain where hundreds had died so 20 could crawl back out into the light. I closed my eyes. Claire's clouded stare looked back at me. The chorus of those inhuman voices echoed in my head. I could still feel the phantom pull on my ankle, the choices I'd made again and again. We'd survived the tunnel. I wasn't sure if we'd survived what it had taken from us. The Humvee kept moving into the dark, and we let it. Because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. And I wasn't ready for that yet. Well, my dear friends, another fantastic episode there. Thanks to Augustus for another zombie tale, this time from Colorado. Nice, really claustrophobic setting for that. What would you do? Oof, can't even imagine it, getting stuck in that kind of situation. Would you? Well, you wouldn't even think about getting out, really, would you? But yeah, another epic episode. Thank you for that. Hope you enjoyed it. So that's, what is that, 8, 9 into the series now? I really should go and check because I've lost count. But plenty more states to go, so hopefully it's going to keep on rolling on for quite a while yet. Anyway, I recorded all of that in one go, and as you can tell, as always, my mind is gone, so I'm going to shut up right now and say, visit me again tomorrow. Should be another story. I know, it's today's Thursday, there's going to be another one tomorrow, Friday. Got quite a quiet week at work, so making the most of it. Well, my dear friends, hope you enjoyed it, as I mentioned, and I will see you again very soon, and just remember, it's only a story. You will sleep well tonight, yeah? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.